Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Mark Mills,
Here.
Mike Nichols,
Here.
Larry Mosier, Joe Stevens,
Here.
Isaac Chavez, Joseph Bookwalter,
Here.
Chris Alba.
Okay, as far as the minutes, we got the August 6th special meeting a couple weeks ago.
We have enough.
Yeah, we got the right people here, so we have a motion on the August 6th.
I'll make a motion that we accept the August 6 minutes.
Second.
He
Mike,
wasn't
you
here.
weren't here.
I'll make a motion.
Mike.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so we've got Joseph and then Larry.
Off to
do you
such a
still
good
second it?
start.
All right. Okay, we're good then.
Okay, roll call on the minutes.
Mark Mills,
Aye.
Mike Nichols,
Abstain?
Larry Mosier, Joe Stevens,
Yes.
Joseph Bookwalter.
Yes.
Okay, so
Oh, for sure it was there.
we got somebody here. 4 of the 5 approving, so. Okay, the first and only item on the agenda is public hearing on Wildcat Resources LLC docket CPC 2026-03, secondary plat for Meadowbrook Phase 2 section. So Liz, for our staff.
Yes, so this is the first major subdivision that I've done a staff report for you guys on. So this format, as we have more of these come through, will start to look familiar. But with subdivisions, state law says that if they meet all the standards, you have to approve them. If they don't meet any of the standards, then you have to deny them or table them or do something else until they do and you can approve them. So when I write a staff report for a major subdivision, now when we have minors come through, sometimes I abbreviate more, but when it's a major, I frame that staff report around the criteria in the subdivision ordinance that have to be met. Even if they are met, I include them because my hope is that you guys start to get some familiarity with what items you should be considering, even if I haven't copied the whole ordinance in. So as you see more of these, you start to also know what things are going to come up and be discussed. So with that, this property is zoned A residential, and everything immediately surrounding it also is. There is a little ag zoning to the south on the other side of the ditch, and there's a little C residential more to the north along Wilshire Drive. This particular section that's for the secondary plat, which is just section 2 of the Meadowbrook Phase 2 subdivision, is a 12.77 acres. There's 26 lots within it. And this request is to review and approve that secondary plat. The primary plat for all of Meadowbrook Subdivision Phase 2 was approved by the Plan Commission on January 24th of 2024. Section 1 of Phase 2 received secondary plat approval and was recorded October 30th of 2024. This secondary plat is just for single-family dwellings. Houses are already under construction in Section 1 that previously was recorded just to the west of this area. And there's also existing family dwellings to the east. There's some multifamily apartment buildings to the north of where this platted area is along Wilshire Drive. And then there's still 2 phases or areas remaining in this primary plat that are not getting secondary platting yet and will come at some later point. One is labeled Section 3 on the primary plat. The other doesn't have a label. It's just kind of the outlots, for lack of a better term. It's going to have to give itself a label when it comes through for secondary. And when someone's ready to file those, they'll come to you later on, assuming the primary has not expired. So on the second page, I've just outlined in yellow the 2 parcels mostly involved. I say mostly because that northern parcel there has a tail that goes to the north. That tail is not actually part of the platted area. Once this gets recorded, there'll be a property line there. And then you can see, again, the zoning districts. And then I took a picture. This is actually on Buckeye Boulevard, or at where it intersects with Hoke Avenue, looking down the length of where these lots will sit on the
In other words, looking
north and the
east,
south.
looking east.
That is correct.
Thank you.
So in terms of request analysis, the primary plat, as I previously noted, was approved January 24th of 2024. And as primary plats are valid for 3 years. That is still valid, so we can hear a secondary filing on it. The Surveyor's Office stated the Drainage Board granted approval February 20th of 2024 and does not have any issues with the installation. This site is within the JV Man legal watershed. The Health Department did not review the subdivision because it is served by central sanitary sewers. Todd Corey with Frankfurt Utilities stated that the plans for sewer, water, and electric are satisfactory for the utilities requirements. In fact, in this case, as-built plans have already been submitted for everything except the lift station, and they have been accepted by both the Board of Works and City Council, conditional upon the Plan Commission accepting the plat and everything else tonight. The Frankfurt Street Department has not highlighted any issues with the roads, which were completed with Section 1 of Phase 1. They just kind of moved on beyond, Section 1 of Phase 2. And then we're going to go through, like I mentioned, the different application and design items one by one as we go through those requirements. What I've tried to do to help pull your eye is I generally use yellow highlighting for each category of criteria. And then in this case, I have underlined things that we need to discuss or talk about in more detail from staff's opinion when we go through. Anything that's adequately addressed, I've just summarized, but I haven't gone into a ton of detail. So first off, as I already noted, that primary plat is good for 3 years unless otherwise set by the Plan Commission. So it is still good. There is an item that I'm going to bring back up at the end of the staff report, but we do need to deal with tonight in addition to accepting the secondary, and that is the fact that the primary will expire in January, this coming January. The developer does not anticipate having the outlots and Section 3, their secondaries, completed by January. So they are requesting an extension on the primary plat for those last 2 sections or phases when they come through, and I'll kind of get to that at the end. If we choose not to grant that extension, the primary plat will expire in January, and then those remaining parts of the subdivision would have to start back with a primary plat again in order to go through. So that's why I've mentioned it, even though it wasn't their direct application, because I don't want us to accidentally have that expire when there's active work going on in the subdivision. So 2, we've got to have construction plans approved before filing. So in this case, the construction plans for Section 2 were developed and submitted with Section 1. They're dated 2/8 of 2024, and they're on file with Building Services. There's a whole lot of items that are required to be submitted with a secondary filing, and all of those were verified as submitted. A note on the covenants, they are the same as Section 1. And staff did presume I did not do a detailed review on those covenants like I would normally do because you have already accepted them with the secondary plat for Section 1. So I have presumed that they match what the city wants already. I did ask the developer to record a clean copy of those covenants with Section 2 so we don't have to cross-reference between 2 different plats when somebody wants to see the covenants down the road. And the covenants do address forming the homeowners association, which is required in the ordinance. The next item requires that all streets and required improvements have to be complete before secondary plat can be approved. If anything is not complete, it must have a performance guarantee, that's typically a bond, approved by the Plan Commission and the Board of Works. So all the infrastructure for Section 2 has been completed, inspected, and as-built plans submitted with a maintenance bond, and I've quoted the parts of the ordinance that require those, except for a lift station. An estimate has been provided to install that lift station, and a performance bond was submitted for 125% of the estimated costs. One of the items you will need to do before you can approve the plat is you'll need to approve those maintenance and performance bonds and amounts. Alicia Albertson, city attorney, has verified they meet the requirements for the city to accept in terms of bond language. The Board of Public Works and Safety and City Council have both voted on August 10th to approve those bonds and the as-built plans, which the Board of Works specifically has to approve, and to accept the infrastructure that is completed for city maintenance. But both those actions are subject to the approval of the financial guarantees by the Plan Commission and the secondary plat being approved as well. If we had this particular development is tied up in Ready Grant funding through the city as well. If we had a longer timeline, the developer would have moved back and forth a bit more between these boards, but we've worked really hard to try to bring this all together before September 1st, which is what is required for that funding to remain intact. So With that, the principles and standards of design, general design standards, this proposal appears to meet these standards in this section. Most improvements are being dedicated to the city of Frankfort, but a homeowners association has to be created to maintain drainage, entrance signage, common areas, commonly owned landscaping, and similar amenities. The developer is responsible for those things at their expense until the homeowners association is formed. The city does, as a note, need to track this and verify that homeowners association is created before the developer is permitted to sell or get permits to develop the last few lots in the subdivision. Character of the land, there's no issues under this section that would create any concern. Preservation of natural features and amenities, there was not any existing significant trees, natural features, or irreplaceable assets on this acreage that were required by the Plan Commission to be preserved, other than the floodplain along the southern edge, and it is shown as a dedicated area on the plat. The proposed secondary plat does comply with the standards in this section. Subdivision name, this was chosen at primary platting, doesn't duplicate other subdivisions, no issues here. Monuments and markers, there's no issue in this section. The surveyor is aware that if the subdivision is approved, then they've got to make sure that they set the monuments and markings after final grading. In terms of utilities, other than the lift station, the utility infrastructure has been installed, inspected, as-built plans submitted, a maintenance bond submitted, and everything is compliant with this section. The lift station does have approved construction plans, but it has a performance bond submitted in lieu of completion, as permitted by the ordinance. So the proposal would meet the standards of the section as shown on the secondary plat as submitted, and these requirements are also referenced in the covenants as appropriate and approved on the primary plat in January of 2024. Public use or open space. Phase 2 is required to have common areas for public use, open space, and those areas are shown in the primary plat. However, none of the common space areas are included in Section 2 of the secondary plat. So since it's physically located in Section 1, Section 3, and the outlots, this secondary plat would appear to meet the standards, and I didn't need to do a review of any common space with it. In terms of blocks, the blocks, and actually I'm going to summarize blocks, lot design, and lot access. With regards to all of these, the secondary plat matches what the primary plat indicated and the Plan Commission approved. And then the covenants do require hard surfacing of driveways as required in the ordinance, so everything would appear to comply. In terms of streets, the streets have already been constructed. And they do match the construction plans, and the proposed secondary plat meets the standards of that section. In terms of sidewalks, as a major subdivision, sidewalks are required and shown in the construction plans. The covenants require each lot to install its section of sidewalk with the construction of their house, and the developer is responsible for the other common areas. There is an odd mix going on of 4-foot sidewalks, which is the old rules, before 2023, and then 5-foot sidewalks, which is the new rules since 2023, but it is also what the Americans Disabilities Act since like the 70s has wanted. So you've kind of got a blend, but the developer sidewalks are kind of already installed at 4-foot in the Section 2, and there's going to be transitioning between houses going in and developers areas, so kind of leaving further working out of sidewalk widths between the developer and city officials as they work through that lot by lot. However, staff feels that the Plan Commission, if they choose to grant an extension to the primary plat, may wish to clarify to the developer that for the outlots and Section 3, they will be expected to follow the current UDO standards of 5-foot sidewalks to allow for ADA. And that will need to be something they work through with those secondaries versus not approving an extension and having them come back with a new primary plat, which then would be subject to those same standards and getting there that way. So mention that under that section. In terms of curbs and gutters, street signs, infrastructure meets the standards of the section. No issues there. In terms of culverts, this is primarily a subdivision with curb and gutter and storm sewer rather than culverts, ditches, and swales. So the infrastructure in place matches the approved drainage plan and utility requirements. There's no issues in this section. Same thing with ditches. Street lights, per the construction plans, Frankfort Utilities is placing the street lighting, not the developer, along the streets to light sidewalks and intersections. There's not a lot of detail due to the city doing the installation, but nothing indicates that the proposal has any conflict with the standards of the section. In terms of easements, there are drainage and utility easements shown to the fronts and backs of all lots. There's no easements along the side lot lines, but when you look at the configuration, because of how the lots turn 2 different directions, there are easements in all areas that will allow infrastructure to move between drainage common areas and road right-of-ways and lots. I didn't see anything that was like on an island. There is an outstanding question, not necessarily a problem, but a clarification. Staff noted that on lots 9, 10, 11, and the west half of 12, there's no easement on the rear lot, but it also parallels the floodplain. So staff was trying to figure out if that easement to the east side behind 14, 15, 16, and 17 is to drain to the creek for lots that are further east. And then these 4 lots are expected to just overflow on the land to the creek, or if something accidentally got missed, in which case, this being a minor thing, we could probably do a secondary contingent on them just drawing the easement the rest of the way across before I sign it. But I think it's a clarification we need to make with the developer, because if this is intentional, I'm not saying as staff that we need to make them connect it. I just want to make sure there's not something missed. In terms of storm drainage, Dan Sheets, County Surveyor, examined the secondary filing, and he says everything matches what's expected based on the Drainage Board approval. So in terms of a recommendation, staff would recommend that the board clarifies if there's any missing easement across the backs of lots, those 4 lots, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I have a typo there. But if that looks good as drawn, and that's what the intention is, then staff would recommend to approve the Meadowbrook subdivision Phase 2, Section 2, secondary plat with the performance and maintenance bonds found to be acceptable as submitted, because the plat meets the standards of the ordinance. And then additionally, staff would recommend that the board address the housekeeping item regarding the remaining sections of Meadowbrook subdivision Phase 2. The applicant does not anticipate being ready to do the secondary platting on any of the remaining phases before January. They would like a 5-year extension for both the outlots and the remaining Section 3. Staff would recommend granting that extension. It is a larger extension than normal, but the developer has explained their lots are not selling as quickly as they had hoped, so they want to make sure they have enough time to sell enough lots in their first 2 sections and have the capital to put in the improvements they have to have done before they can come back for that 3rd section. And then the outlots, I think, are waiting on a buyer and a purpose, so it may take a moment for those to be marketed and be ready to come in and be platted. So staff would not have an issue with that longer than normal extension of 5 years, which would push the remaining phases out to January 24th of 2032, with the clarification that when Section 3 and the outlots come in for their secondaries, they need to follow current Unified Development Ordinance standards of 5-foot sidewalk widths when they file their secondary plats. And staff would like the board to verify the developer is willing to agree to that before we would grant that extension. Since that's going to continue, I think, to be a challenge for staff, especially when you start looking at a lengthy 7 to 10 year timeline between primary platting and when it actually gets installed. So with that, I think that completes my analysis. And if there's further questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. I really appreciated the developer's been great to work with, and so is their surveyor in terms of getting me info. And I've got a plat here as well if we need to reference that.
As far as the missing easements, what numbers are they? Because it looks like there's.
I had a typo. They are 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, you have a copy too. And it's in the floodplain. But then what stumped me was the fact that 12, 13, and 14, even though they're also in the floodplain, have an easement to the rear, which would indicate that's not just overland flow over there, but something is specifically moving. So then that caused me to wonder if something was missing, because if there was infrastructure that needed to come across from Hoke Avenue for any reason across the backs of these lots, there's not a location for it to go. So, and I didn't know enough about how they did that design to know if that was intentionally left out because they're having this easement because they're putting maybe some underground infrastructure in this 24 easement or 20-foot utility easement coming from the east side. And that's why it comes down to the floodplain, because maybe it's outletting there. And then maybe these other lots are just draining over land and there's no underground infrastructure, or if something just kind of got spaced. So I'm not stating it has to be one way or the other. I just want to make sure it's right before we sign it and that there's not something missed and the developer sells lots and then somebody needs that easement and suddenly we can't get it.
Yeah, because the line showing on 9, 10, 11, and 12 is actually the 75-foot drainage board easement.
Well, yes, you have a drainage board easement there, which is separate, and then you have the floodplain, so your buildable envelopes, have been substantially truncated to the north as they should be. And those lots are gonna have some additional recreational, land for enjoyment, but not land they can put houses
Whether or
on.
not we require it should be really depend upon either the county drainage engineer or the city utility.
Dan does not have an issue with it as drawn, but the developer is the one putting in most of this infrastructure. So I actually felt like the question probably should punt to them to figure out if this was intentional or if it's an oversight.
I can address that.
Okay.
Thank you all. Phil Triplett appearing for Wildcat. I spoke with the developer today, and that was intentional. They did not intend to put a drainage easement through the back there for the issues you've addressed, the fact that there's the floodplain there and also the drainage, the ditch drainage easement's already there.
And there is no infrastructure back there that would require one.
No.
So none of the city or county reviewing engineers asked for it and they signed off on it as shown, then, right?
Dan signed off. Yeah, that all went through and it's signed off on. And I did verify that. I took plans over to them when I was doing the staff
So
report.
they're okay with them left off, then.
Yeah.
Well, I obviously would be, so.
No, and I don't have any issue with them left off either. It was different than everything else. So I wanted to make sure that there wasn't an oversight.
And then
There's no way those houses flooding are there if they get a lot of rain like we just did.
So that's going to be a loaded question. So floodplains are regulated by a flood which has a 0.01% chance of happening in any given moment, basically what we call a 100-year flood. It could happen at any point in time. It's roughly the size of a 100-year. However, what much of the state is dealing with right now is a 1,000-year event.
Yeah.
We do not regulate that. And houses in this location, if we experienced what like Indianapolis and Richmond and some of those are currently experiencing, these houses absolutely would flood. Like that is just more water than but we don't have a law that says they have to build higher at that point. You hope they picked up flood insurance. In fact, the floodplain on the back of these, most mortgage holders will require flood insurance because if any part of a lot has floodplain on it, usually banks consider the whole thing to be a risk, but that's a mortgage policy. That's not a planning or a governmental concern. It's an assessment of risk made by those who make loans. So hopefully these entities will all be carrying insurance, but that's going to be a private matter. So yeah, there's no way to guarantee they're not going to flood. There's definitely water there, but what we can say is they will be able to meet the regulatory requirements to place houses on them without being in the what's commonly termed the 100-year floodplain.
Yeah.
So
Also, a question on the property owners association, at which point, because there's already houses going up being lived in, at what point does that kick in? Because
yep. So that's why.
you can't make it retroactively as far as collecting fees.
Actually, their covenants do talk about the fact that everybody has to pay in fees when it's, so they'll have to figure that out. The developer is responsible for everything until he chooses to create the property homeowners association. I'll tell you, like, there's a little bit of a philosophy difference when I'm looking at covenants from scratch, which this would have been appropriate to do at the primary plat, not now. I want to see a clear kick in for when the homeowners association is created. What percentage of lots is sold? At what point is it required? This subdivision does not have it, but because you approved it that way at the primary, I don't know that I would advise changing it now. What it does say is it's the developer's discretion at what point, which is why I noted in here, your staff and building services, if I'm involved, we need to track this. What we typically do when we have older subdivisions that are this way is once they get developed into their final phases, we simply block any building permits on the last few lots and until they get that homeowners association taken care of, at which point buyers will call and be upset and developers will usually go, oh, and get it done.
And it's
So,
overlooked in both the city and county in the past on these subdivisions.
yep, I've had a couple we've had to deal with.
Yeah, and it's
Yep.
how you go back 10 or 20 years. for-
Ideally, the developer remembers that and he gets his homeowners association created. And by the time you get to those last, 10 lots or so, it's not an issue of conversation. But the covenants do not say that they have to do it at a specific lot sale. That's going to be up to their discretion when they want the homeowners to help pay for it versus them paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly discretion of the developer to do it, and they're gonna do it as soon as they can. Why would they wanna maintain maintenance and ownership?
Yep, you're going to pay for everything until you do it.
Are the ponds and anything,
That's
Ponds are theirs.
it's not gonna be city or county responsibility.
It is
gonna be
not, but if,
homeowner.
it'll be a homeowners association, but until they create the homeowners association, the developer has to maintain them at his sole expense.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, but those are all included as part of the homeowners association responsibility. The city does not take over ownership of those.
And the surveyor in this case, this is not being dedicated as county drains on this particular one. But he's right. But with as big as this subdivision is, he's going to have a ton of expense by the last 5 lots on Section 3 if he hasn't created his homeowners association so he can bill all the homeowners that are draining into that.
You know, hypothetically, the developer would be taking care of these forever.
That's right.
And so,
Actually, the covenants do require that a homeowners association be created. It just doesn't specify the time, like
only-
whether the developer does it on his last lot or whether he does it on his first lot.
The only way that the developer would be required to take care of this forever is if there were lots that were never
Sold,
built upon
and
them,
he's still,
sold.
yep, and they still owned, yep,
same
yep,
as the owner, and that has happened kind of here in the county.
occasionally.
So either way, the city's not on the hook for maintaining things. It's the developer or the owner association.
For the drainage board or the parks. or whatever.
Well, Drainage Board has not accepted these as drains, so they would not be automatically involved. That would be something that the homeowners association would have to take to them if, or the developer if they wanted to try to dedicate it and see if they could negotiate
So
that.
what are your plans as far as setting up a homeowners association? What's your timetable?
I don't know.
How many houses before you get in there?
Phil might know better than I do, but
Yeah, I don't know what the timetable is for that, but it is developer discretion. Once they've determined, basically, once they want to hand over that control, because right now the developer has the ability to control everything. So once they're willing to give up that control or it becomes cost effective to give up that control, that's when they make that decision.
most developers that I've seen, it's about 50%.
Yep, that's what I was gonna say.
Then
Mhm.
turn in homeowners.
Once you own the minority instead of the majority, yep, that's what I normally have seen through other developments.
Hopefully that's soon.
So it can't be cheap mowing all that.
So we're in the section of our meeting where we're talking to the developer, et cetera, right?
Any questions that you have, we
Yeah,
are trying to
that's what I
answer.
mean, questions and so
Yep.
forth.
You might want to give your name for the record too.
Clem Coons, VS Engineering in Lafayette. So I might make a little comment on the drainage there with the ditch. I mean, it's good questions, always, concerned about stormwater and drainage and all that. There is a common misconception that a 1,000-year storm is going to be hugely larger as far as elevation than, say, a 100-year, as opposed to, say, a 10-year. So the way nearly all drainage facilities work, and especially ditches like this, there's going to be a big jump from 10-year event or a 10% event to a 1% 100-year event. To go from a 100-year to a 1,000-year is not going to jump 10 times. So the more extreme the event gets, the less incremental increase in that elevation. So to say that these would flood, well, anything's going to flood at some point.
Yep.
If these houses flood at the elevations we put on here, we're all flooded. The whole city's flooded.
I actually think if we had an event like what
extreme.
Iowa got, most of Clinton County would be underwater.
yeah, I mean-
Like that's the reality of it.
everything's
We're
a
very
design-
flat. And
Everything's based on some design criteria, and the 1% storm is the criteria here, which plus 2 feet of freeboard on top of that.
yeah, which
So-
is an Indiana state law that you have to have the 2 foot of freeboard. That's not a federal. Indiana is one of the states that because of historic flooding losses and trying to figure out how you balance that has chosen to have the extra freeboard to additionally mitigate risk. But yeah, like I said, this can meet all standards. Staff has no concerns about the way the floodplain's laid out. There's elevation, there's not an issue.
And we typically take the approach of there's no point in putting easements on lots if you don't need them.
Yep.
And so the area along the floodplain, nobody back there wants somebody, upstream cutting something across the back of their, I guess, hopefully the floodplain looks nice, right? They'll probably mow it or whatever, but that's the reason is there's no need for infrastructure across there.
So you guys want this extension for up to 20, whatever it is.
2032. It's a 5-year extension. I just
Sure,
did some
yeah,
math
so
for you.
That's definitely something that you're requesting and you're wanting. That's not something we've come up with. That's something that you guys want. So that you can complete.
So I did
complete
tell
drainage.
them it was going to expire. They didn't know it was expiring in January and then they would have to start over again.
Sure.
But they sent me an email asking in writing for the 5 years.
Sure,
And
that's
we
not,
can just grant it without this technically is a hearing, so.
So you have the right, you don't require a public hearing to grant an extension. It doesn't say that anywhere in the ordinance. State law doesn't require a public hearing to grant an extension, but it does say that to have, the Plan Commission, for whatever reason, when you did this plat, you didn't set different dates for the phases, which is normally what you do, because you wouldn't expect a subdivision with 4 phases to all be developed the same year. That would defeat the whole purpose of having phases. So for some reason, it was just all left as one date. So, but it says then after that, the Plan Commission does have the right to adjust. It says your date expires in 3 years automatically unless the Plan Commission grants an extension, does not limit you with a specific amount of extension or type. Now, common sense would say kicking something indefinitely down the road without a reason does not make sense, but this is a subdivision that has had consistent development. There's good reasons why they're asking for the increase, and the only law change that's becoming problematic for staff and for the city's interests going forward is the sidewalk issue. Everything else is well addressed, and there's not any concerns. The street department also echoed their concern about the sidewalk issue, and Brian reviewed this and wanting that if we were going to extend the primary as approved. But you have the right to do it. You can also give a lesser extension if you want. You don't have to grant what they ask, or you can give a greater one, although I would not recommend. I think the further out you get, they can always come back again before that next expiration and give their reasons why they need more time.
Sure.
Great. Liz, you say there's good reasons for asking for this extension. What would a good reason be other than you're not selling any houses?
Economics. I've Tippecanoe County spent 20-some years working down there, and of course all around these areas and stuff. But we've actually had Plan Commissions grant belated extensions. So it expired. They came in a year later. They're like, oh shoot, we forgot. So they retroactively granted extension. There are places down there that went 10, 15-year extensions. The reason is this still what we want here, right? And if it's not what you want and you totally change your mind, maybe that's a different deal, right? But if that's still what you want there, you want to make it as easy as possible for somebody to keep doing that. And so, yeah, you get out here, the word on the street is everybody needs housing. Everybody needs housing. Well, what we're finding out is everybody needs housing that costs $200,000 for a new house and a lot.
That's right.
It doesn't exist, right?
Right.
And so it takes more time because there's a smaller segment of people to do that.
Sure.
So, it's not an uncommon thing. Do extensions and
It's not, and
And is there a performance guarantee backing up the extension or not?
so we don't have performance guarantees on these other phases because you have to have your construction plans and your performance guarantees before you grant a secondary. Until you grant a secondary, the secondary is your collateral. They can either choose to build the infrastructure once they get construction plans in, or they can choose to bond it. But right now they're not looking at secondaries there. And then normally with these big developments, the money that's needed to continue building the infrastructure is generated off of the sales of the earlier phases. So it is directly connected when something's not selling as quickly, because if something's not selling as quickly, the money's not rolling in as quickly to build the additional road, sewer, and water infrastructure out through those remaining phases. So that's what sometimes can slow something down just a hair.
And I think when we initially approved the primary plat, the intention of everyone, us and the developer, was that this would go a little bit faster than it has gone. But then because of the slower sales on the residences and things like that, things have had to slow down a little bit. But the plan is still in place. They're still planning to do the same thing that they wanted to do when they came with the primary plat. We all, you all voted and determined that that was a good idea. So really, refusing to do an extension on the primary plat at this point would just be throwing up a roadblock. That
you're just going to have to rehear a primary that's exactly the same as what's currently adopted and go through public hearings, which, that's the end result.
Trying to listen to both of you.
Yeah. So basically, all we would be doing by not approving an extension is we would be throwing up a roadblock, and we would have to then redo all of the work that we've already done for a project that we've already said is a good idea for the city. So there's really no reason not to do it other than if we wanted to change the entire project, which I don't think anybody really wants to do.
Nope. I reviewed this pretty thoroughly, and the only thing that's creating some issue just because of the time passing is that extra foot of width on the sidewalks for the ADA and with what is consistent with the city. Everything else, the standards are consistent, the development is right in line with.
regarding the sidewalks, those are installed by the builder when they're built. So developer doesn't really care, I guess.
Well, your covenants for those phases would have to say 5 foot instead of 4 foot if
Or just build
that
them,
was,
yeah,
you
build them
know.
5 feet.
Yeah.
We're okay with less paperwork if that's okay with the city. If you want 5 foot sidewalks, put 5 foot sidewalks in. So.
So this is not pertaining to the current one, but the 5-foot sidewalks would be the space.
Correct. The construction plans are already approved for sections 1 and 2, you know, and that those primaries have come through and they've already got the bonding and stuff's already installed.
And
So
those-
Just so I
any
understand
issue
it.
there is going to
Yeah.
need to be worked
The-
out between people on the ground.
I believe the construction plans had 4-foot sidewalks.
They do.
On them. So those are pretty much, they've already been approved by
And
everybody.
more importantly, they've already been built.
And built.
Like, so-
They've been approved and built by everybody. So those are kind of, they are what they are. But in the future, we have the ability to enforce by having them put it in their covenants that in the future for the rest of the plats or the rest of the
That's phase-
secondaries.
that's phase 3,
And
yeah.
any common areas that they might have in those phases
Right.
that would have to have sidewalk along, that they would have to do the 5 foot then. So we're just clarifying it up front rather than having that argument when they file.
Sure, I
and-
understand. I have a non-technical question that I've been asked by people on the street, I guess you'd say. Why are all the houses gray?
I didn't notice they were.
If you haven't been out there, if you haven't noticed, they're all gray.
I've driven.
There's a white one.
There's a white one.
There's a
made by-
white one.
That was,
That wasn't built by them though.
that was
I
built
think
by the city.
There might be 2 white ones, but yeah, there's at least 1 white one.
Is that part of the covenant or something?
We're not the builders. I don't know.
It's not in the covenants. I read those. I did read those.
Apparently
Okay.
what somebody requested.
I guess, yeah, okay.
I'm gonna check that out. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, there are a lot of gray houses, but there are some white ones. I think there's maybe a blue one too, if I recall correctly.
Must be your favorite color.
I think there
guess.
is a blue one. 'Cause now that I
think
think
there's a
about it,
blue
I think I
one.
did notice a blue one.
Just one.
The gray
But-
doesn't show as much dirt.
Yeah. Anyway, does anybody else have any other questions?
I don't have an issue with the extension.
So what we would need to do, if you all are in favor of this, we would need to approve the performance bond and maintenance bond, which the city council and the Board of Works have already approved. And so that would be our first step, is approving those. Then if we are in favor of the plat, we could approve the secondary plat. And then the third course of business would be to approve that extension with the condition that they have the 5-foot sidewalks, if that's something that you all want to do.
3 separate motions, you believe?
I would
Yeah,
do
I
3
think-
separate
So is
motions.
there anybody who would like to do the first motion?
I'll make the first motion.
Okay.
Any discussion? If not, roll call vote on that.
Who was the second? I didn't-
Robert Joe.
Okay, Mark Mills,
Yes.
Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Larry Mosher.
Yeah.
Joe Stevens.
Aye.
Joseph Bookwalter.
Aye. And then, do you want to repeat the second?
Yes,
recommend-
so that first motion was to approve the performance and maintenance bonds. The second motion is to approve the secondary plat as presented.
I'll make the motion. That's
Is that was the sidewalk?
Presented.
No, that's
No,
later.
that's
the next
later.
motion.
That's the next one. Yep.
3 motions.
Yes. So Robert Joe made the motion.
Joseph Bookwalter second.
Joseph Bookwalter seconded.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mark Mills,
Aye.
Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Larry Mosher.
Yeah.
Joe Stevens.
Aye.
Joseph Bookwalter.
Aye.
And then the third motion would be to grant a 5-year extension of the primary plat with the condition that any future development on the remaining phases have 5-foot sidewalks.
I'd make that motion.
Who was first?
I think Larry.
Larry and Joe.
And then are you the second? then? Okay.
Okay, roll call on the third motion, please.
Okay, Mark Mills,
Aye.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Larry Mosher, Joe Stevens,
Aye.
Joseph Bookwalter.
Aye.
Anything else we need to do?
Mark and Mike, are you guys both in town this next week?
Next week, probably.
Okay. Not the next few days?
No,
Okay, when will you be back in town?
somewhere between Tuesday and Friday. Most likely Friday. with this.
Okay, that's still before September 1st.
I'll be back
Okay,
by September
because
1st.
I'm going to need signatures from both of you on the secondary plat when they bring me that'll be 2 copies we'll need to ink through for recording, and we need to have it recorded before September 1st. So that's why I asked, because you're going to get a call either from Miranda, probably from Miranda once we have it in, to come sign, and then once you guys have signed, then I'll come sign the parts I have to sign.
If I'm not back by the deadline,
Then the question would be, they'd have to change the notation, but could the vice president sign instead of the president?
Can we make a motion to that effect that if Mark is unavailable to sign, that the vice president could sign in his stead?
Motion made.
And who's the vice president?
Larry.
Okay, are you around this next week? Should ask that first. All right, all right.
I thought I said I was the vice. I thought they
You're the
said I was vice
secretary,
president.
Mike.
Oh, I'm the secretary. Okay.
Yeah.
Do I
I know that one.
Do I have a secretary?
Okay.
When's Mark leaving? We have these tomorrow.
Like tomorrow morning before dawn, probably.
So 5 o'clock.
I hung around for this meeting, basically, so.
So we've got a motion that Larry, as vice president, may sign them in Mark Mills' stead if necessary.
I
by
would say
Robert
if you want to do
Joe.
it tomorrow, then we would just make that motion and they can just change that to say Larry Mosier, vice president, and we can get him
Or
signed
could we
tomorrow.
even word more broadly that in my absence, any officer.
Well, if Larry's present, I don't know why they have to know what name. The recorder is going to require
they
the
want a
actual
name.
name to be on there. So we have to know who we're telling them.
Link there and just print it and
Put it there.
We've done that.
So-
times.
I don't really care. If Larry's available, we can just put
Typically, you'd have vice
vice
president
president.
sign if the president's not available.
And we've got a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call on that motion.
Mark Mills.
Aye.
Mike Nichols.
Aye.
Larry Mosier.
Aye.
Joe Stevens.
Aye.
Joseph Bookwanter.
Okay, so if Mark is not available, or if we want to sign it before, we can have Larry then sign it, and that will be.
Are you wanting to get that done and recorded this week?
Well, I mean, whenever, obviously, we don't want to wait till the first.
That's what I'm worried about. So I would say let's just have you put Larry Mosier, vice president, on that primary approval certificate. And then you can bring in the 2 copies to Miranda tomorrow, and Miranda can call Larry and Mike. They can come in and sign, and we can have this signed and back to you this week, and you can get it recorded, and then it's done.
That would be my preference too, because we don't want to put the ready grant on.
No, that's my worry. If anything goes wrong, heaven forbid, Mark has a car breakdown, whatever. Now there's this giant rush. This way, there's no rush. We know it's done, and we can all move to the next thing.
Sounds good.
Anything else on this?
Record the same day.
Same, once I sign it and you hand to you, yes, you can walk it straight up to the courthouse and record it.
We got plenty of flats out there that have a cross through Mark Mills as equivalent and somebody else written under. It's happened.
Yeah, I've seen
It has.
before, yeah.
Well, you can for the recorder, you can cross through something and initial it. It just doesn't look as pretty.
There's a lot of fill in the blank deeds even, so. So any other business? There is a regular meeting next Wednesday, and I'll be 50-50 not here, so. Larry.
Say again, 50-50?
If you're leaving tomorrow, how are you
Maybe
50-50?
tomorrow, but depending on the weather and energy, we've got no earlier than Tuesday, no later than the following Sunday.
I like
how you Okay.
travel.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I want to do
But
that.
right now, today, I'm waiting on being back Monday.
I'll be back when I'm back.
Because I've not hit the road since I had this
Your leg.
hip last year, and so it's kind of, I'm apprehensive about how that's gonna work out, so. My goal is to be probably not here, but. And there was a couple items. I guess, for this week.
Yeah, I think we have three hearings for next week.
They're all rezones,
Yep.
I believe.
They are.
They are.
Kind of,
Some kind of development and some business development areas or something. Isn't that what you told us?
I don't want to get too far into it without it being the
That's okay.
hearing, but
That's-
you've got a filing for Meadowbrook's outlots for a rezone. You've got a filing for an initial zoning district for the NHK building out by the interstate that was just annexed and needs to have an initial district. It's now defaulted to It's defaulted to A residential, which is obviously not appropriate for a factory. And then 180 was annexed at some point over the last few years and just got missed for the Plan Commission sending an initial zoning recommendation. It also would technically right now be zoned A residential, which again is not a district in which, if something happened to it, it couldn't be rebuilt. So we're just cleaning up those 2 items. Well, I guess we're cleaning up 1 item and then we're taking care of the other in a normal timeline. So yeah, 3 rezonings.
so any more items for discussion before we adjourn? Now, is a motion to adjourn.
Made.
I'll second.